Good evening, everybody, and welcome to One World, One Blood Bowl number 22. The one with the complex and difficult title because it's going to be about all sorts of things. That's because tonight I want to say, where are we? Where is Blood Bowl in 2023? Happy New Year to us all. But 2022, that awful, ugly, terrible year that it was, is now gone. It's finished. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Like my two children, it's only the fact that my first child was such a disappointment, I think, that my second child gets such an easy time. And I think 22, if it wasn't for 21 being absolutely worse, we'd look back on as a terrible year. But 23 is here now, so we are launched into a whole new joyful year. And personally, I'm quite positive about the state of Blood Bowl, where we're at, where we're going, and where we might end up. And all of those are completely different subjects. So just for this year alone, we all know that Blood Bowl 3 is going to release on Fumble on February the 23rd. There's a Freudian slip. So there's that to talk about. There's that to look forward to. Fumble continues to be updated regularly. We've got all sorts of new stuff coming there, and we do have the lovely Krista with us this evening, who can talk about that and the future plans for Fumble this year. The tabletop scene has sprung back with a vengeance after a really successful Euro Bowl. We've got the Welsh Open that's been going on today. We've got a World Cup this year. We've got a full-looking post-COVID calendar. People get excited to dust off their minis and roll their dice. So 22, 23, we're there now. It's done. We're through it. We can start just looking to the future and the glories that is the Blood Bowl second season edition rule set now that it's fully bedded in. Or maybe not. Maybe there's a whole different future out there. With me this evening, I have the lovely Krista from Fumble. You may know him as from Fumble. But also he's from other things like tabletop and painting and modelling and collecting and knowing loads about Blood Bowl. We have Hargrim, also from Scandinavia, which essentially means I'm guessing that this is a family reunion to some degree. Probably related. Certainly the little beard DNA there looks quite similar. Scandinavia, I refuse to believe it isn't just one place. There's only about 12 people there. And RickWreckless, who you probably haven't heard of. He's very new on the Blood Bowl scene. Plays a little bit of tabletop, I believe. Not entirely unknown on Fumble, where I believe he understands some of the new rules. I think he's done some Blood Bowl 2 in his time. And I think you've decided to do a bit of streaming. Isn't that right, Rick? How are you? How's 2023?
Yeah, I'm doing great, thanks. 2023 is off to a good start. Um, always off to a fast start in our household because it's my wife's birthday quite early on, and we've just been away for that. But yeah, really good here. Thanks, PC.
And congratulations, I believe the household's getting a little larger in the near future.
It is, and yeah, very excited for that. So, baby number two, February 22nd. So, obviously, I'm infinitely peed off with Cyanide, who very inconsiderately are releasing
Yeah.
Blood Bowl 3 the day afterwards. I honestly can't believe they've done that to me, but yeah, really excited for the the
Of
new
the
one.
27 release dates they have promised, the one they look like sticking to is the absolute worst from your point of view.
Yeah, this thought has crossed my mind. Absolutely.
Well, fingers crossed, it's absolutely beautiful and everything you could dream of, and that your baby's, all right too. Um, does it mean that we're not going to see you launching into the brand new Blood Bowl 3 when it arrives? Is it going to be just too daunting with all that time sunk into being a dad?
Well, so I think what happened the last time that with baby number one was it took maybe about 2 weeks to get back to some shorter streams, and then gradually got back to the normal schedule. But I think for the first 6 to 9 months, there'll be a very tired version of myself streaming rather than the version of me that's been around for the last year or so.
Well, I hope we still get some of you. Are you excited about this year? How do you feel about 2023?
Yeah, very excited. Like you say, kind of 2021 and 2022 got a light review of things because compared to the previous years,
Hmm.
they both came out glowing. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. And yeah, loads of really exciting stuff going on in Blood Bowl. Tabletop continues to develop with what I think is some really good frequently asked question updates in general. And of course, new releases such as Norse and then Amazons, and we'll get more of that kind of thing as well. And it's just the fact that it's a living game is just so exciting now, and seems to be a growing community as well. I won't tread too much on Krista's toes, but I absolutely love the updates and the competitions on Fumble recently, and stuff that he's got planned going forwards that we've chatted about in the past. and yeah, of course, and then Blood Bowl 3 is finally going to be coming out as well. So it's
Yes.
kind of like the triple lock, really.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's ready or not, we're getting Blood Bowl 3. They seem to have locked on the date. It's definitely coming out. They've been fairly open that there may be some development needed as it comes out. There's some things they're going to work on as it goes. But something is coming out or being happening on February the 23rd. What that is and how much it attracts new people into the game, we'll have to wait and see. What about tabletopping? Do you think you're going to be able to get around this year, or is that going to have to maybe sit back?
So a week today, I'm in Sheffield for a one day. So very much looking forward to that. And fortunately with the UKTC rules, so I know a little bit about those at least. I've had a look at that before. And then I'm hoping to play the Water Bowl weekend. I've got permission, in theory, to play the Water Bowl weekend, which is my local tournament. I absolutely love it, and that's a 2-dayer, 3 days before the baby's due. So
Wow.
I might even be that mid-game I'm like, sorry, opponent, you
Yeah.
win. I'm out of here.
Had a couple of touchdowns. I'm having a child.
Exactly. So we'll see if that happens or not. But yeah, and then after that, I'm certainly taking a break. I've already declined to enter my usual tabletop league that has just started its new season, and I won't be playing any NAF tournaments for a good few months. And then hopefully by the tail end of the
Yeah.
year, I'll start to pick up one or two.
Yes, I mean when I had young kids, and the second one is just as hard as the first in terms of the how much it impacts your life because two parents suddenly there's a twin call for your attention constantly.
Yeah.
It is important that you do hold on to some of the things that make you you, but yeah, they need to probably sit on pause for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got to strike the balance, haven't you? And yeah, hopefully I'll get that right.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if
Well,
not, it'll be
look,
something for the child to complain about in later life.
I
So
mean proper perspective here. Good luck with the really important stuff, which is getting those tournament wins. Um, and obviously it's not. It's having a kid and enlarging the family and giving the love where it needs to be. But we'll miss you in Blood Bowl, so get yourself back as soon as possible. And we look forward to lots of stories of a tired Rick still debokeying
thanks.
like there is no tomorrow. Just because I think Krista has got loads to tell us about the state of Fumble, let's talk a little bit about tabletop. Because you mentioned that it's got the UKTC rules. That's something I want to come back to in a little bit because there's been actually an update in the last 24 hours of those UKTC rules. And I don't know if your tournament plans to follow suit and update them with even shorter notice. But things they are removing, and I want to talk about why in terms of the meta and where that means. But first of all, let's just say hello to Hargrim. We've seen him before, but it's been a while.
Hi.
There you are, looking still young, impossibly young. I believe you're not
Yeah.
aging. Welcome to
No.
2023. How's the Scandinavian tabletop scene and your good self?
So we just finalized our calendar for the year, meaning that every single tournament that's going to be done over 2023 is done. Dates are set, venues are sorted, everything is where
Wow.
it needs to be, and we're working out some kinks with a Scandinavian rule set that is mainly done by the Danes, which is called All Teams Viable. Because there's constantly a lot of balancing issues that need to be taken care of in terms of races being misplaced in terms of how good they are, and certain star players that are coming out that on paper don't look so good, but then turn out to be really, really good. For example, Bomber Dribblesnot. People
Yeah.
thought he was going to be bad, and then he turned out, oh, he's kind of broken. So we're still constantly trying to adjust our rule sets. But it's lively, it's looking promising. I've even heard rumors that Seabrawl might turn up eventually if he gets permission from the missus.
I'm another person with a very young baby.
Yes, he had his child in November, I think it was.
Oh.
He had to miss Eurobowl playing for the Danish national team because he can't count to 9.
How did the Danes do?
So the Danes ended up winning the Eurobowl this year after the English took 2 defeats in the first 2 rounds, with our best coach
Could you say
going
that again and
9.
try and look a little bit happier? Is that at all possible?
The English lost the first 2 rounds. The people who were supposed to be contending for the title lost to Sweden. So we were very happy about that.
Yeah.
Um,
We're talking a
but
little
yeah,
bit before we went live about why you think that might be. Let's troll them further. Let's roll out the theories. Help the English.
okay. For the English scene, you need to work on your rule sets because they are still set in the 2016 edition, they're still set in a time where Wood Elves were good and not a lot of people were running star players, and you're still not taking star players on your competitive rosters, which is a mistake. Wait.
Well, you heard it there. That's from the champions of Europe, the England defeating Scandinavian Massive. Which particular region of Scandinavia? We're talking Denmark largely, aren't we?
Yes,
The
this is
bacon bit,
Denmark.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Are you busy this year? Are you planning to go to a lot of tournaments?
So I plan on attending at least every Danish tournament that I can find time to, because it's a bit tricky being a university student as well. I have papers I need to write. I have reading I need to do.
Don't you just cut paste from
Um,
the internet now? Isn't that?
yeah, sure. I'll just copy paste a bunch of things and definitely not get kicked out of university. But I also have four
Don't do
foreign
that. By the
trips.
way, that wasn't advice. That was a joke.
Yeah, but I do have 4 foreign trips planned as well. I'm going to the UKTC for starters.
Fabulous.
Then I
I'll
have
remember
promised
to look
myself.
down and see you.
Yeah, I mean, you might need to scrape me off your shoes first, but happens. I've also promised myself to go to Bilbao and play the Bilbao Team Cup with 2 Spanish guys. One of them I played in a local league with, and then a Scotsman, unfortunately. I also have the World Cup, of course, and then I'm going to Thrudball, which I promised Glowworm
Wow.
and Thor that I would go to.
Yeah, it's one I'm long overdue at, but my partner insists on family holidays that really often clash with it.
Yeah.
So she comes first because she's dangerous. We do had a question coming from Bazakistine, one of our lovely North American friends, asking, is it possible to go on a foreign trip and not cross an ocean? It isn't from where I live because all of the little countries that used to be connected to England, we own now. They're part of the United Kingdom. So we took over Scotland and Wales and they belong to us. But I think it is for you, isn't it, Hargrim? You can.
Yes, we can pretty much just drive through if we want. Like, at least if we're going to Spain, you can drive, you can fly there, and without crossing an ocean. Um, but yeah, obviously, two trips to England requires a little trip over the seas, like we used to do a couple 100 years ago.
James, again, that was a joke. I have nothing but respect for the Scots and the Welsh and all the work they've done doing the English's bidding for hundreds of years. Um, yes, and Bazakistan, I would point out that as someone from North America, I've been there. There are countries still in North America you could get to without flying. There's a little one just to the south called Mexico. Some of your friends want to put a big wall up, but it's still on the other side of the wall. That's how walls work. And up in the north, there's a place called Canada that all the nice people went in the 60s and 70s when they didn't want to go to Vietnam. So even you could go to a foreign country without crossing an ocean. It's possible. North America and America, not entirely the same. Krista, speaking of Scandinavia, that brings you naturally to the fore. But you're in a different bit of it, aren't you? The cold, sad bit up
The, the,
further north.
the better bit, yeah,
Okay. The bit with the really expensive beer.
indeed.
How's life in the lovely free cities of Sweden, and how's things
It's
on Fumble?
it's good. It's good. Lots of cool stuff happening on Fumble recently. I played a couple of games. Fancy that.
Amazing.
I just decided that it was time to actually play some BB 2020 and join the trophy with the squad.
Cool. What are your 4 races?
Oof. Complicated questions. Tomb Kings, obviously.
Obviously.
Skaven, High Elves, and Nurgle. The latter two, not so great.
Well, I mean, it's lovely to see you playing some, and that's what 2 of the teams of legend, isn't it? Do you think,
Yeah.
as a Khemri player, are we going to get some Khemri updated this year? Is this the year that Khemri
Uh,
gets some love?
Maybe. It doesn't matter. I like the theme. I don't care where they're at in terms of how good they are. I when I was younger, I was more competitive. Nowadays, I don't care.
Now, I can't just let you say some things are happening on Fumble without mentioning the big one, which is 20 years.
Yeah, that was a thing. Yes.
That was a thing, what, 2 weeks ago? Fumble passed its
Mm,
20-year anniversary.
yep.
I mean, I just want to say well done and congratulations. I think that's long
Thank
overdue
you.
from everybody. What an
It's
awesome achievement.
what a trip.
Yeah, did you would you have in your wildest moments thought this will be 20 years? I'll
No,
be in my middle ages and this will still be going on.
no. I mean, this is slowly coming up to half my life. Not quite there yet, but not far off.
Uh,
It's incredible. I mean, when I started, I didn't really think people would be interested, and here we are.
Someone said to me in the comments for this, I put the adverts out, and sometimes people comment on them, usually really positively, which is nice. Someone described you as the man that kept Blood Bowl alive once the BBRC was disbanded. We had
For a
no
while,
computer
probably, yeah.
games. Is that fair? Do we
Well, I
owe
mean,
Blood Bowl to you?
it kept people interested in the game, I'm sure, at least to some extent.
Yeah.
It was the only place to play Blood Bowl online. If if you didn't have a local league who were still interested, you could play on Fumble for a very very long time with nothing else.
So that puts a huge weight on your shoulders. Um,
Maybe does
do
it?
you have regrets? Is this something you'd have done again? Would you have launched into it knowing it would be 20 years and this much time and effort and responsibility?
Probably, probably. I mean, you're talking about release dates. I'm 20 years in. I'm still not done.
Yes, yeah. Still playing Blood Bowl, still enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah. I think the community is lovely as well. I mean, that's one of the major parts why it's still up, because the community is just amazing. I love everyone who's participating, helping out, doing things, or just playing and having fun.
Well, on behalf of everyone, I mean, a huge, huge thank you for all that you've put in over 20 years and continue to do so. Please don't press the big red button just yet. I mean, there's so many of us still enjoying it, and it's
No,
so
no
central to
planning
how
to.
many people do their lives. Wow, I mean, what do you say, Rick? What do you want to say to Krista and 20 years on Fumble? Help me out here.
Yeah, it's incredibly impressive. And mostly, I only know some of this historically. Like obviously, how epic Fumble's been. There is no shadow of a doubt that Krista is one of the main reasons the Blood Bowl community survived as strongly as it did. Along with the NAF deserves a lot of credit.
Hmm.
But yeah, absolutely incredible having Fumble online. So many people that wouldn't have had any possibility of playing Blood Bowl all those years that then could and kept that interest going. So yeah, absolutely amazing, and just such a good job to this day. I'm enjoying it so much now, because the formats are so good. There's so much work and passion put into it, and yeah, it's incredible now, and it always has been from what I can tell.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't arrive at the very start. I arrived about halfway through 2003. Then I want to put a 20 at the front because I've been doing that for so long. But no, I didn't. I arrived before there was a 20 when it was 2000 and at the first start of that. So I've been there nearly the 20 years, but not quite. Have we got people that have? Other than you, are there some diehard originals still on Fumble, do you think?
Well, I see a few people from that era. I mean, yourself. There are a couple of people, but most people are completely different. I mean, there are people who are still on the site who played before Fumble was a thing. There was a small. I ran a league basically where people emailed me results for a while, and then that became a bit larger than was manageable for one person.
And then there was a time where we were uploading results to the site, and then the site would
Yep.
process them and put them together. Um, you've seen a load of changes in your time, and obviously, I'm talking about this possible fictitious changes to a new rule set. How do you? Let's launch us into that. How do you feel we are with this rule set? Is it a good one? Are we sat on the pinnacle of the greatest rules Blood Bowl's ever had?
Yes and no, I think. I think in general, BB 2020 is still Blood Bowl. It's still the same game that we're playing. Nothing really has changed fundamentally. Um, I think that with the 2020 rule set, Games Workshop ran out of time. They could have needed another 6 to 12 months refining and making it, just finishing the job. I think there are signs that they started doing something really really good, like they've done with 40k and AOS in the past, just properly like a well structured, keyworded rule system. But they just ran out of time, and they put junior people, I think, to finish writing the rules and didn't have time to fix all the issues before it was time to print. So that's my main hope for the 2024 rule set, which I think will happen 2024, late 2024, maybe early 25. Um, I think my main hope is that they just don't do anything fundamentally different, just finish the job. they will inevitably have to add something new to get people to buy the rule set. Obviously, new team, something. But
So if we're moving
fundamentally,
into a season 3, I mean, that would be my prediction. They've done second season, presumably the next one will be third season.
yeah,
Since the 2016, they're sort of counting as a reinvention rather than an addition with
yeah,
what happened with the Blood Bowl Rules Committee and the Living Rulebook. So we ended the editions and we started seasons. And clearly we had Blood
yeah.
Bowl, which was their season 1 launch. We've had second season. Do we all think a third season's on the way, Hargrim? Do you think that's likely?
If GW follows the pattern that they have been using both for Age of Sigmar, Warhammer Fantasy Battles back in the day, and Warhammer 40k, we should theoretically be seeing a release next year, because they tend to release a new rule set for a game between 3 and 5 years after the previous edition's release.
Right.
So it is theoretically an option that we might see it next year, but it also depends on a lot of what GW has in store for Blood Bowl this year. They there have been leaks on various websites about some of the new star players or old star players that are now returning in I think it's the 2022 Almanac. It's called. Not really sure on the name. There's still teams that are playable, GW officially playable, that are missing miniatures. We might be seeing them this year, as well as maybe a couple of new races. It all depends on how far along they get with that project before we see a new edition being released. But I think it's likely we'll see it next year.
Yeah, I would guess that 2024, late 24 has been the target, but COVID, Brexit, all that stuff could potentially just slide the schedule. They had some major trouble for a while.
Yes, there were a few things that were getting caught up in all of the. I mean, the whole world's had a logistics jam and a production jam, and COVID hit everything in every way. So it wouldn't be surprising to see a 4-year plan drift to a 5-year plan, for example, would it?
Yeah.
But I mean, I share some of the rumours I've heard is that there is a new person in charge, having a look at the rule set and thinking, how could we get this in a perhaps slightly better state that some of the 2020 changes may not be entirely ideal. Rick, is that a hopeful sound to you? Are you looking forward to yet another rule set? Is that what we need and want?
Yeah. So yeah, I've heard rumors that we will be getting another one in that time frame. For what that's worth repeating. I've said all along that I felt that this rule set had the potential to be the best rule set we've ever had, but was a really rough diamond. And I think we are seeing it start to get some polish now, although it's got a long way to go with the FAQs. I think a wonderful change recently was the inducement system overhaul. But what we don't want is an initial, which is what we've got right now, is an initial rule book with quite a few errors in, like a really nice game hidden in there somewhere, but lots and lots of errors over the top, and then lists and lists and lists of frequently asked questions. Making it more functional, making it more understandable, more coherent, and better to play.
And is that what we mean, Krista, by a keyworded built rule set is one that perhaps doesn't need the FAQs?
Yes.
Where they've gone through referencing everything back, checking that all the language matches, all the tenses match, so that no one can stroke their beard and say, but here it said present tense and that one was past tense, and therefore, I mean, all of that we need ruled out before we can actually really start breaking it properly.
Yeah, I mean, at what point can which scale be used, which is a complete mess today. And I mean, what's an action? Is Blitz an action, or is block and move as part of it's just confusing. They should keyword like activation, in my opinion.
Yeah, so we're not talking about stuff like the word rush instead of go for it. We're talking about bringing words in that can then be defined through the rule set and used to link different aspects, so you know exactly how to play the game.
They're almost there. They're talking about being knocked down and being placed prone, like, for example. Those two are different keywords that mean different things.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff should be like formalized across their rule book, at least for the core parts of it, so it's not a complete mess.
What would we argue about?
Why would we need to argue when we can just sit down, enjoy a nice cold pint, roll some dice, and then scream at each other for one being luckier than the other?
The quality of the dice, yeah, that's what we can argue about.
I've always said the darkest corner of hell is the 7th level is reserved for the rules lawyers. And all they have between them is one copy of a game written by Games Workshop with 3 pages missing and half the text in French. And that's it. And they're all just there arguing about how you play it for the rest of eternity.
So you're talking about the Blood Bowl rulebook?
Yes. But I do think they are capable of a good rule set. It has happened. And we may see Lightning Strike again. I don't know. Let's talk about where we actually are, though, in the more granular sense. So are we? We're all pretty much enjoying Blood Bowl 2020. No one here is quitting Blood Bowl and storming off because it is still happening. People are. Some are done with this.
The game is in a better state than it's ever been. And that's due to,
There's a statement. Prove it to me.
yeah.
What makes you say that?
So at least in Denmark, we're seeing a rise of new players starting
Okay.
to come in. People are picking up the miniatures, they're picking up the game because it's more accessible. It's easier to get to learn the core fundamentals of the game and the basics.
It has better
Understandable.
miniatures. They look more
Yeah,
dynamic and fun. That is
yeah.
it.
At least the Games Workshop side as well. It's for some people, it's the miniatures that draw them in. They look at them and go, "Oh, that's cool. I want to use them for something." Then they pick up Blood Bowl. It's easier to learn, so they start playing it more. So there's that aspect of it, but it's also the streamlining of the rules that make. When I say streamlining, there are a lot of problems in the way that they've worded it, as Krista mentioned. There are a lot of problems in key terminology, but in essence, they have streamlined the core part of the game to a point where it is more understandable for the average newcomer to get to know the game.
I
And
do
the
think reading
veteran,
through the rule set, it is laid out better
yeah,
in terms of how the rules teach you the game. You know, you can
yeah,
read through it and you go, okay, I can kind of see how I play the game by the time you've got through it. You're not going back and going, hang on, what was that section again? I think that has more structure to it.
yeah.
But haven't we made some things ludicrously complex, like trying to throw the football
That
and
is another
a
that's
blitz
the downside
kickoff
of the rule
action?
set. That is the downside of the rule set. The way that GW measures the game is how many miniatures are we selling and how many books are we selling.
Yeah.
They're selling more books and they're selling more miniatures, ergo the game is doing better.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In terms of the competitive meta or the competitive scene, it's still a bit iffy because the game feels, if star players are involved, the game feels more boring and it feels more like people are just playing towards a flowchart. Like, if their flowchart doesn't work, they lose the game. If the flowchart works, then they win. I
Do we-
have Morg, 3-die blitz, worked, cool. Next turn, Morg, 3-die blitz, worked. It's the same thing again and again. It just becomes repetitive.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about things like the withdrawn offence. That if we get to a point where Blood Bowl becomes rinse and repeat the same tactic, and that tactic is largely not about taking decisions in the moment, but about a strategy that you just make happen, I think we lose people. I don't think that's attractive in the longer term to turn up and play weekly in a pub or in a competition.
Yeah.
So my worry over those tactics isn't that they're effective or not effective. It's what does this mean to the health of the game?
Yeah, I had a
If the key tactics
conversation.
become don't play Blood Bowl, then just don't play Blood Bowl.
I had a conversation with someone a while ago about Bomber, where I think that if you pick Bomber, you have to sort of build your strategy around that one player, and it just controls what the game is in a way that the rest of the team doesn't matter. They're just a screen,
Yeah.
and that's unfortunate. I think the game is a lot more fun without those kinds of mega stars.
I mean, one of the first times I saw it, I suppose, was Bo Galanti, Broken Galanti, hiding behind the Bretonians, which seemed to be that you'd put your Bretonian teams on the field largely as a screen to keep Bo until you could just break Bo out with the ball, do an 11 space run, and score the touchdown. I feel that's become sort of how a lot of teams have been building in this rule set: is get a decent star, keep them protected, put the chaff out in front, and then wait for that one moment. I wonder if that's got a long-term appeal. That concerns me. Am I just being an old fuddy-duddy, wanting minute-by-minute decisions back?
No, I don't think so. I know, at least from a lot of conversations I've had with the Danish players, that we're getting a little bit tired of star players as well. Fewer people are bringing star players to events. Like, if they're trying to be competitive, then they might do it. But obviously, with a lot of the rule sets that are now coming out, you have to actually sacrifice something in order to get access to a star player.
Yeah.
So there's that variation and that regulation in how star players now function, comparable to when we saw the rule set released, where you weren't giving up anything to get a star player. It's just, okay, I bring Morg. Good luck winning.
So my question is this a business decision from Games Workshop? Are they making the stars good so they can sell the figures? Because, I mean, we're talking Forge World miniatures that are very expensive.
People do love. I mean, there's all those toxic hobbyists that are ruining our game by buying and painting stars. Is that what we're saying? That it's largely Thor's fault.
Not quite what I was getting at, but sure.
Rick, is it all the painters' fault? Let's blame them. They're buying those
Yeah,
stars and ruining our
as,
Blood Bowl.
as somebody that's terrible at painting, I'm very happy to jump on board with that and blame them all. Credit to NAF, who, as always, have managed to grow a flower from a pot of dirt on this, because I really like the solution for star players. You now effectively pay 3 times in a tournament where we used to pay once. You pay in your skill set to even have access to a star, so you have less skills. Then you pay the gold, which is what you used to pay. And then for the better stars that are really broken, you give up even more skills yet again to then get that star. So it now works in NAF tournaments, but what does that say about the Games Workshop rules and playing in progression, that they've had to do that to make star players viable?
Do we have to accept that now we've moved beyond the living rulebook, now that Games Workshop have the rules back, that what they care about is selling miniatures, selling rule sets, selling paint, and selling Forge World stuff? That's where their money is. And then the IP, if they can sell the IP to make games and things, great. They don't particularly care about us trying to have a competitive game, unless it
Yeah,
impacts on those on those aims that they have. So
but I mean,
isn't it our job, by which I mean the NAF's job, because I don't see who else would do it, to say, okay, you make that, you make your money, so there's a game out there, and then we will turn it into something competitive. And as Hargrim said, we can look at it and say, here's how we tier it so that it's a bit more balanced, a bit more competitive, or we the NAF say, these stars need to be taxed higher, and then we do it that way, because they're not going to give us a balanced game. It's not Hero Bowl makes the money. That's a
yeah, I mean,
Mr. Pangolin. Thank you for Hero Bowl. Yes, that is the phrase I've been searching for.
at the same time, it's not like they don't know that the stars are overpowered. I mean,
Yes, let's come around to this. What Krista's just held up there, I do have a graphic ready to show you. Let me pull it up. Ah, that's why.
they are very well aware that some stars are completely overpowered, and instead of fixing the problem for open play leagues like Fumble, obviously, or just leagues on tabletop, they do a tournament system where certain stars are just more expensive. They cost skills. So they have this skill point system, all this stuff.
So this is the Blood Bowl Matched Play Guide, which has been released for, I think it's quite a reasonable price point, something like £10, isn't it?
Yep. I think it's like 10 quid.
And we have differing views on this. I'm interested in it. I don't know what's in it beyond what they've released here, which I'm going to show you the, I think, only key bit in a minute. Krista, as you've seen, has it, so he can talk about it from that knowledge. Hargrim has already said he doesn't think there's anything in it. Rick doesn't know anything about it at all, so he's going to be our interested inquisitor asking us questions. And I have heard from somebody telling me that this is the death of the NAF, that this is Games Workshop taking on the NAF and saying, this is our game, we get to decide. So
generally speaking, let me start with this. As James was saying, this is what a waste of £10 looks like. This is completely useless for most people. I mean, sure, if you never run a tournament, if you never heard of the NAF, if you do all this stuff and want to make a large tournament or a small tournament, then yes, this is a reasonable starting point. But I mean, you can just search for a Blood Bowl tournament and you get a million rules packs that are better.
But don't I need the official Games Workshop rules that tell me how to run tournaments, Krista?
I do.
Well, there you are. You see, so they've made their £10 off you. Surely they're happy.
I'm sure. I don't know how well it will sell if people will read honest reviews about it. I mean, it contains reasonable information, right, about running tournaments at small scales.
Okay.
But it's just copied from NAF, essentially. It's essentially a NAF-style tournament system with the Megastar system added on top, which I haven't seen before.
Yeah, let's have a quick look at that. I've got that here ready to show as well. So let me pull that up. So this is what they're suggesting, is that every tournament should allocate skill points, which can then be used to buy both skills, but also star players, and these things called megastars. Now, for megastars, we have to come here to the Blood Bowl errata, which is a downloadable from the Warhammer site, and that should be showing you right now what are listed as the megastars. These cost twice as much as a normal star, is the suggestion from Games Workshop. The list they have come up with is Bomber Dribblesnot, Deeproot Strongbranch, Griff Oberwald, Hackflem Scuttlespike, Creek the Verminator Rustgouger, and Morgan Thorg, quite surprisingly. they've said those styles should be taxed double. Um, so, I mean, that's essentially the only new information in there, isn't it? Other than the sort of advice you'd get from any NAF tournament organizer.
Essentially, there are a couple of new inducements that are a complete joke. There was a section about what was it? It was something, some secret objectives, secondaries that you can do. It's a D16, and you get some random stuff that they suggest you use as a tiebreaker, and they're completely useless. I mean, no one in their right mind would use these because it goes from you need to knock down a player on the opposing team to you need to pass 3 times successfully.
That sounds exactly like the tiebreakers often used on the London tournament scene, which I'm not a huge fan of.
It's
Someone will
completely
use them. The
useless.
fact that they exist will use them. And interestingly, the Welsh Open was this weekend. And a friend of mine gave me a list of some of the inducements that were being used in the Welsh Open. There was 3 biased referees, a grand total of 7 Bloodwiser babes, a Chaos Sorcerer, 2 Dwarf Runesmiths, a Halfling Hot Pot, only one Halfling Master Chef, a Hireling Sports Wizard, so a proper wizard, 2 of them, one of the cheaper wizard Horatio, Carry Cold something or other, Papa Skull Boom, Riotous Rookies were used 8 times. The guy that makes your gives pro to 3 of your players, pretending he's going to sign them up and make them famous, he was used. We had a sports necromage. We had 3 warg drummers. And 7 or 8 bribes. I'm not entirely clear on how many of those it was, but a lot of bribes. Almost all of them used by players controlling death rollers. So death rollers with sneaky git and bribes. There's a lot of inducements out there. Is that good? Should we be using more of those in tournaments, Hargrim?
Uh,
I mean, I don't know what half of those things are. I had to look some of them
so
up. Warg drummer seems terrible. Why were there 3 of those bought?
a lot of the new inducements that Games Workshop are trying to create are inducements to spice up league games. The second you start implementing them into resurrection style games where you play in a very different manner, you're not playing for team preservation, you are playing to win.
Mm.
Suddenly having a wizard, a regular wizard, not Horatio, the one that randomly shoots fireballs, having a regular wizard is going to change that game from being very even to being very heavily skewed to the side that has the wizard, because there's a theory. I work in League of Legends as well, and there's a theory of if you have a very dangerous ability, what is worse, the actual ability or the threat of the
Yeah.
ability?
Yeah, I was
It's
talking
the
about
threat
this
of the
earlier.
ability,
The
because
psychological effect of knowing that could be used, even if
yeah,
it isn't unlikely to work, can change how
sudden,
people coach every
suddenly you're
decision.
suddenly you're starting to change the entire game plan that you have for your drive, for your opponent's drive. You're changing the way you're setting up. You're changing every single decision you're making with the reminder your opponent has a wizard. Because it's such an imbalanced inducement that that sort of thing needs to not be in a tournament where everyone is supposed to be at the same rough level. Even though you might be playing different races, you still have skills that sort of manage to try and balance it all out so that every single race is viable.
But
And
don't you
suddenly
want
you're
some of
bringing
this other
people
fun
in.
stuff in there too?
Uh,
I mean, I want to face a
you,
warg drummer that I've got no idea what it is until I read about it and go, oh, blimey, okay, how am I going to deal with that? That sounds a fun challenge to me.
it can be a fun challenge, but if you're turning up to a tournament with the intention of I want to have fun, there are going to be people that are turning up to win.
Come on, Rick, you're Mister. Let's try something out on the edge. Wouldn't you want to build with Kari like Hellboy just did? I don't remember. I looked it up. Oh yeah, that's right. She's the fabulous cheerleader that if you run out of people, and obviously with a NAF style you'd probably build so that that's quite likely, she gets to come on
A
and
lot of these
be.
were in 2016, right? She was in Blood Bowl 2016, and
Yeah,
so
she
was
was.
Horatio, the Scatter Wizard, and stuff like this. The problem I see is it's more barrier to entry again, isn't it, for newer coaches? I've seen coaches sit there. I've had tabletop league games where, like, I'm against a newer coach and they've got the inducements and they're having to scroll through book after book. And this is the other problem. They're not all in one place.
Yeah.
They're all over the place in the rule books. And so these poor new coaches who are struggling enough to take in all the Blood Bowl information that they've got to start with, have then got to look through multiple books and learn multiple inducements, many multiple inducements. So I don't want the barrier to entry to be that high personally. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, and it's something I want to talk about more at another time. But in order to solve that, I decided I wanted to have a look at some of these inducements that were being used in Wales. So I went here to, I don't know if you know it, it's Daddy Merda. It's
Yep.
the Italian site that has every single inducement listed, as I can show you here, with who they are, with what they do, a really clear explanation of the rules, and that is daddymerda.it, which is a fantastic resource given to us by the Italian community for Blood Bowl. To me, it's one of my standard links that I always have available to me. But there's a lot of craziness out there. What about the pitches? Do you feel the same way that we shouldn't be having the pitches when Blood Bowl 3 comes? The rumours I hear is they're going to be turned on for the first season.
I think in general, pitches are a fun idea. They're a fun concept because it changes every single game when you're playing the same team for 40, 50, 60 games. It can get a bit drab and dreary playing on the same pitch with the same team every single game. So rules like pitches, balls, stadiums, uh, other extra things can sort of help spice up the game to make every single game different and interesting. I think when it comes to a short span, it's gonna become too overwhelming for people to like complete rookie picking up Blood Bowl 3 saying, "Oh, this looks kind of cool." Then playing a game, barely knowing what is going on the pitch in the first place, then having to get to know what pitches are, then having to get to know what balls are, then having to understand what star players are, it becomes very overwhelming. They'll play one game and go, "Just this is too much.
So me,
This is too much
little
information."
Johnny new player, I go along to the Welsh Open. I sit down. I bring my humans out that I've painted myself. I go, oh, hello, and they go, hi, I'm Hellboy. Here's this star cheerleader that I've brought along, and I'm going to use it to do all sorts of things you're not going to understand. Oh, do they get to come on the pitch now? Do they? Oh, that's my cheerleader doesn't do that. Are we saying that the experience required to understand all of these thousands of different options we've got, if we bring them all in, is going to alienate the small little Johnny new player, and essentially that Hellboy is toxic?
Yes,
Yeah,
and
okay.
especially the last part.
I mean, I'm joking. I mean, Hellboy's a lovely chap, and I'd love to have him on and hear all about the Welsh Open and his experiences trying to break the rule set. But it's not a coincidence, is it, that three of what I would consider the great competitors that went to Wales, Purple Goo, Andy Davo, and Joe Manji, three people known for their ability to look at a rule set and spot where an advantage might be, where a good race might be, where a strong roster might be. They all took Death Roller Dwarves. Again, when I put this advert out, one of the people on Reddit challenged me, as they often do, and said, the One World, One Blood Bowl you really need to do, PC, is about dwarves. Why are they so broken, and what should we do about it? I mean, that would be a really short episode, because the answer is they're not, and what you should do about it is coach better. But whilst I may do an entire episode of saying that really loudly until people listen, and I'll get on Andy Davo and say it to him until he agrees, then I think there is an issue that people don't find them necessarily fun to face. I would cede that much, definitely. And is the death roller a problem? Because we've got the World Cup, who supposedly made rule changes just to make it not happen with a sneaky git. We've got three of the sweatiest tryhards I know going to Wales with death rollers just to abuse it. Or is it fine? Death rollers, what do you think, guys?
The problem isn't the death roller. The problem is fouling. Because they changed a core part of fouling from season 1 or 2016 to season 2 or 2020, whichever denomination you prefer. They changed a core part of how fouling works. Now guard works on fouling. Sneaky gate allows you to move after you have done the foul action. It doesn't immediately end. Plus, if you don't break armor and roll a double, or even if you break armor and roll a double on the armor roll, you do not get sent off. They changed fouling to a point where no matter what you do, fouling is going to be broken. And a rule set that allows you to take Sneaky Gate and a bribe is going to see Roller Dwarves. Because you get free Dirty Player +2, you get a bribe, you have Sneaky Gate. What's not to like? You knock something down, if it doesn't get removed, just roll over it. your opponent won't get to play the game. It's going back to the whole turning the game away from being Blood Bowl and becoming a flowchart game.
Krista,
yeah,
Rick, let's go. Rick.
I had this written down as one of my things. You asked us on some stuff we were worried about in the game, and fouling's the big one. People say sometimes that, particularly more casual people, "Oh, I'm glad piling on isn't in the game anymore," and I'm like, "Do you know Sneaky Git? Sneaky Git dirty player comes in at much lower TV, can be in resurrection tournaments, coupled with bribe and unbiased ref and dirty player. It's just insane stack, absolutely insane." And it just makes the game so random. And I know we play a game of probability, but there's a heavy amount of skill and strategy involved a lot of the time. Not always, but a lot of the time there can be. And I just feel like it wipes out so much of that. I play games that I'm really looking forward to on Fumble or Tabletop, and then it just entirely comes down to the fouling or the bomber, and I'm like, oh, flip me. I'm not even playing Blood Bowl anymore. I'm just literally playing who can roll the better dice for the next couple of turns.
Is it fair to me to say coach better? Develop strategies that don't let players get fouled, they don't get left out of the pack? Or are we just going to see two blobs of players circling each other waiting for the one they can foul?
That's what we call a skill issue.
Krista, how do you feel about fouling? Is it a problem? Rick's highlighted it as one of his. Is it one of yours?
I have a bit different position, I think. I mean, currently it is a bit of a problem, sure. But the thing is, there has to be attrition in the game. We've had all sorts of different attrition systems that all have been very unpopular. Aging, claw palm. Now fouling was bad for a while. Now fouling is bad again. Somehow players have to be rotated. Now we have seasons coming in to rotate things. Do we need fouling to be this good? Probably not. We have a very significantly different casualty table as well, with a lot more serious injuries than before. So, yeah, I mean, some way the players have to be taken off the teams, otherwise they just blow it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have some season type redrafting where you have to kick people because they're too good. So I don't know. It's a complicated system. There has to be something that's deadly but not unfair. I don't want the game to become, like you said, two balls of players just circling each other and fouling. So that's a problem.
Assuming we do have to keep players turning over, we can't just keep building teams forever. They get ludicrous. Do we prefer that agency to be in our hands with some sort of aging mechanic or a redrafting mechanic where we get to fire players and say, your career is done? Or would we rather that happen on the pitch with some form of high attrition casualty rates? The problem with that is that can make the game unplayable. The problem with taking it as a coaching decision is that you're asking, I've got to take half my team out the back and shoot them through the head. That doesn't feel good. I don't like doing that. I've put, time and effort and emotion into those players.
Yeah, I think
I couldn't give a shit, but some people do. You know what I mean?
I think there has to be some sort of mechanic which is easily tweakable, so you can do small changes without just completely changing everything. Going from Dirty Player being a complete non-issue in 2016 to now when Dirty Player is like amazing all of a sudden. There has to be some way to tune that more finely.
Was it maybe the buff to guard? I never quite understood that one. Why guard now helps with fouls?
Maybe. Guard didn't need a buff.
And the problem with taking that away is that would probably ruin any hope Blackhawks have ever got of ever winning any game of Blood Bowl.
I mean, especially in a tournament context where guard is fairly popular as a skill.
I didn't see it needed buffing. It wasn't like it was underpicked. Unlike Safe Throw, which definitely did need splitting into 3 parts, because that was just toxic. It was ruining Blood Bowl. We did say, and Rick's hopefully brought us on to that, I did set you a list of questions to sort of have a look at where we think we are with Blood Bowl. So I want to come to some of those. I said 3 things that we think are dominating the meta, dominating our thinking and how people are thinking about Blood Bowl right now. We'll all have individual lists, but I will tell you mine. I think 3 things dominating the meta at this moment are Bomber Dribble Snot, Star Bowl in general, and +2. I was just going to put Death Roller, but I'm just saying +2. and I know that that's linked to Star Bowl. But I'm those are three really obvious ones. So let's go around the group and see what everyone else has got, and then we'll talk about which ones interest us from the collected list. We've already had one of yours, Rick. So what else do you think is dominating the meta right now?
Well, I know that some of my tabletop friends who are the ones in the know would say one bomber dribble snot, two bomber dribble snot, three bomber dribble snot, and yeah, that is reflective of the star players in general. He's just the worst criminal of it at the moment. As I obviously, like I say, I've said the sneaky git stack with bribes, etc. Um, and then the last thing to possibly creep in or mention, I've got nothing else that I think is as problematic as that. I don't think there's anything else like ridiculously problematic. Um, I was a bit torn between two, so I'm going to creep into four. Apologies. I've heard that in development, high TV elves are looking very strong in progression, and that in NAF format, the latest fad is amongst players in the know. So I'm told is that Skaven one turning is now very strong. Because you can get a Juggernaut Roger who's definitely going to go right, no wild animal
Yep.
anymore. You can get a 2+ passing thrower.
I remember Juggernaut not only counters stand firm, but also means that 3 of the results on every dice are a push, which is what you want for your one turning.
Yeah. And obviously, yeah, like a sidestep gutter runner, and then it feels almost impossible to fail at that point. Obviously, we know in Blood Bowl, and multiple rerolls a turn, sorry, as well, being the last thing that just makes it so players basically just play a very passive defense drive with Skaven. If there's a great opportunity, like a blitz or something, sure, go for it. But otherwise, just sit back, keep your players alive, do your one turn, and then win your offense. And some players that normally love tabletop Blood Bowl tournaments are starting to complain about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those ones where you're sat for half a game thinking, I have no agency here. I'm not actually playing a game. I'm moving some pieces forward. I will score on my drive, but I'm not playing a game. I'm waiting for the game, which the other coach has decided is him playing Tetris for a round, and then 8 turns of running away from me. Interesting. And if we do reduce Blood Bowl to the point where not playing Blood Bowl is how we play Blood Bowl, then it's really easy to not play Blood Bowl. I can do it on a more epic scale than turning up and sitting there for 2.5 hours not playing Blood Bowl. I can do it for days on end by not playing Blood Bowl.
Sorry, let me just expand on Bomber Dribble Stop for Thompo and anyone else.
Yeah, let's
Sorry.
talk about Bomber Dribble Strot. Let's stay there before we move on and come back. Bomber Dribble Strot, is he on everyone's list, or did you get
Yes.
it? Did you get the question wrong? Great, so he's on everyone's list. What's the problem with Bomber Dribble Snot? Hargrim, bring us in. What's the problem?
The problem is not bombers, because I've always said this, in that bombers are fairly balanced because it's hit or miss. Either it works or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, it's a liability, and if it does, it's doing what it's supposed to do. The problem with Bomber Dribble Snot is that you're removing the part where if it doesn't work, oh shit. It just works.
So, like all secret weapons now, if it goes wrong, it's not a turnover, isn't it?
Yeah. For starters, that is also a problem. That's still debatable, and I'm still debating with myself about that. The problem is his star player special rule, which is if someone catches the bomb, you can just choose to make it explode. Meaning you're pretty much guaranteed to open up a cage at any point.
So either it's going to land and explode, or they're going to catch it and then it's going to explode.
Yeah.
But in the rules,
That's
anyway,
the
it's a 50% chance that if they catch it, it explodes anyway, isn't it? But
yes.
his special ups that 50% to 100% at his choice. He can choose whether to do that or not.
Yeah. That's a problem. When you're playing a game of RNG where pretty much any racial matchup can go either way because it's dice, and you're taking away probability and turning it into guarantee, that's a problem. At least in my opinion.
Quister, I'm sure you've seen some numbers on this. Is Bomber really the plague that he's being painted here?
I haven't looked at the numbers for Bomber specifically, but he's certainly a problem. That 50k is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's a complete no-brainer choice. And in my opinion, it's not necessarily that it's a bit OP in that sense. The problem is that it just dictates how the team plays. You have to just build a cage around Bomber and then chuck bombs all half long and hope for the best. And that's just boring. It's not fun to do. It's not fun to play against. It just feels so hopeless if you're playing against someone who knows what they're doing and keeps them safe.
Now, possibly because they were so new and all being happening at the same time, Cindy Pie Whistle has similarly the same stats as Bomber Dribble Snot, doesn't she? But a different special. So once she can throw, at the cost of a 50% sending off afterwards, she can choose to throw 2 bombs in a single turn. But she doesn't have that automatically explode if she chooses to. Is she going to be as much of a worry? Are we going to see Cindy popping up all over the place?
Yes, I think so.
I think that they have overtuned all bombers. Sadly, I love bombers, and I did in CRP. And I think that with a little tweaking, they can be right back to where they should be, and we should all be loving them still. But I think they've overtuned all bombers. So Bomber Dribble Start is the worst villain in this because of Kaboom. But the fact that it doesn't turn over means there's no sort of turn ordering concerns, which I think was an important part of secret weapons before, like working out the turn ordering. Mighty Blow means that you can just wipe out teams before the game's even got started with bombers these days. You can hit 3 or 4 pieces a turn with Mighty Blow and just start just peeling them off. It's absolutely crazy. You can do it at the start of your turn, and you're not worried about the results. And then the cost reduction of Bomber Dribble Start, which is mind-boggling, is insane. And Kaboom on top is ridiculous. Cindy's only just shy of being as guilty, and I've had almost just as much trouble against Cindy as I have Bomber.
And bombs hit my prone players as well, don't they? So there's no escaping a bomb.
No.
With two bombs in one turn, turn one could just be game over. It's a huge negative play experience because the game can just be over after the first turn.
And if you are prepared to risk her turn one, you can place her where those 2 bombs would perhaps only be 2 pluses to get them into really, really awful positions for the opposition. Where they're hitting 2 or 3 people at a time. So yeah, bombs are on all of our lists. Bring us some new torments and hellishness. Hargrim, what else should be on the list of things we're concerned about?
So there's sort of 2 things in one. I've said the word flowchart quite a few times already, but I'm going to reiterate it because it is such a big problem for me when I sit down to play Blood Bowl. The game with star players has turned into I don't need to think about what I'm doing anymore. There is no strategy. I can do the same thing every single game, rinse and repeat without having to think, and it's probably going to work.
Yeah.
Because it's so ridiculously high odds. It's mostly like the big 3, so Morg, Griff, and Hackflem. Now also Bomber Dribble Snot, because why not? I think that the biggest dominating part of the meta right now is that you can stop playing Blood Bowl while playing Blood Bowl. You're just turning it into flowchart gameplay. It's boring for both sides, but at least, hey, I'm winning. Which was one of the major problems with Underworld, for example, is that you're just 3-die blitzing with Morg every single turn. If you didn't remove it with your Mighty Blow +2, now I'm fouling it. I have a dirty player. Oh look, your player got removed. Now suddenly your opponent isn't playing, and you're not really playing either, because you're doing the same thing again and again.
Yeah.
Which makes it incredibly boring. And now you have to... That, on the other hand, that is the really interesting part of star players, is how do you play into that meta as a team that can't take a star player at that level? Do vampires suddenly become very, very viable because of the way the hypnotic gaze was changed? That has been an incredibly interesting debate, and I discussed it with a couple of the Danish players, where it started to seem interesting, and then the consensus was just they're just bad anyways.
I mean, they are terrible, but the way that it's been changed is very interesting. For those that don't know, all vampires now have animal savagery. They urgently need a spike. I feel they'll get one at some point this year. Vampires tend to sell. So if they bring out a new vampire set of miniatures and a new vampire spike, Games Workshop will probably make money. But at the moment they've got animal savagery, which means to do a hypnotic gaze they have to do a 4+, or they have to bite somebody or hit them, because they don't bite anymore. They hit before they go off and do their hypnotic gaze. But then the hypnotic gaze is a standard 2+. So it's got 1 dice better. And anyone you hypnogaze loses all of their skills. So if you're struggling to get a ball off a blodge player and you hypnogaze it, it doesn't have blodge. It doesn't even have block, let alone dodge. So hit it after you hypnogaze it. Really good chance you get the ball off it. However, getting them to do that thing that it seems they should be good at doing seems incredibly hard. Have you had a go with them, Rick? I know you love some vamps.
Yeah. It felt to me like, and I had this discussion recently with Krista, funnily enough. I've got a theoretical theory in progression that a theoretical theory. That's a good sentence, isn't it? That there's a very now high skill ceiling to playing vampires, but they've got a lot of potential if you're prepared to put in a lot of time to work out the optimal way of playing them. I think they require an awful lot of really pinpoint precision with positioning, which is a good thing, I guess, in a way, isn't it? But like, how complicated do you want a team to be to play? But yeah, they've got a lot of benefits now. That yeah, if you played them really well, I think you get a lot out of them. So I did play them a bit on Fumble last season, and I just made too many mistakes, which was frustrating because it was so easy to get something wrong in a turn. And I do think with a lot more practice and getting a bit more of that automatic, and I started seeing the patterns of play a bit better, then I think I could get some good results with them, and I think anybody could. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on them. But I do think the spike, when it drops eventually, whenever that is, will completely overhaul them anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't be amazed if we see something like a Bloodlust type dynamic back, or something that makes them, that is a unique skill for them. I mean, Games Workshop have shown they're certainly not afraid of throwing a new unique skill out there. I mean, we've had hit and run, for example, on the new Amazon drop. So, they're really not frightened of it at all. And Baleful Hex, so star players can get their own individual skills as well. What else, Hargrim? Anything else for me on your list of what's the current meta?
Obviously, yeah, I just mentioned the whole star player part. But the final part that I put down as what's dominating the meta is the teams that play outside, like specific teams that play outside of that star player meta that are still viable. For example, Skaven, because what can they do in a meta that is so dominated by star players that a lot of other teams can't do? Well, they can just run away with the ball. They can just run away from you.
Yeah.
Either you're stuck trying to find a hole somewhere or having to create an opportunity, creating risks for yourself, where then the Skaven can start to find holes and find opportunities to make plays, or you just do nothing for 8 turns and then Skaven still win. I've been playing around, actually, with, speaking of Amazons and the new star player Boa, I'm going to a tournament on the 21st where we've forced to bring a star player, and I've been experimenting with different Amazon builds bringing Boa, because it seems like an option that could both play into any regular meta, because you have a Hypnotic Gaze 3+ player that still has dodge, has sidestep, has strength 3, so it's still pretty decent to handle itself, but it can also deal with the star player meta, because suddenly you can start getting into the cages where it's normally quite tricky.
Yeah.
Suddenly you can create counterplay for yourself.
And if you could hypno-gaze Griff's blodge away from him, you might actually get the ball off him for once.
Yeah. Plus, you now have strength 4 blockers that can take general and strength skills on normals.
Now, I want to come back to the strength 4 blockers, so let's just park strength 4 blockers in our head for a moment. Krista, what else is dominating the meta that we haven't talked about? Anything?
Well, most of the things on my list are, I mean, obviously Bomber, Stars, Dirty Player. One thing that I would like to expand on what Hargrim was saying, that he was saying that Skaven are very strong because they're very good at running. I would say that this is sort of, to me, that's part of a greater problem, which is that passing is terrible.
So this is the rule set of pace, not the rule set of passing.
Yeah, I think that passing is not viable to do. So every team that's a runner team will be much better because of it, which is a shame. I think that the passing rules and having a new passing stat is interesting.
Because hang on, boss, my human passer and my Skaven passer, particularly my Underwhelm passer, have never been any better at passing than they are right now.
No, but they've never been worse either.
And no one else is passing it at all.
You can, I mean, to me, doing a very short pass should be easier than a handoff. If you do the pass fully correctly, if you have good dice, then it should be easier to catch. But it just never is. And because passing is terrible, all the passing skills are awful. No one wants to take them. There are some good passing skills. There are. But most of them are so terrible, it's just not worth trying for them. And you don't want to pass anyway, because it just gives... it's just a last-ditch effort. Why would you put skills to players where the only time you use it is when you're actually losing anyway?
And to me, that's the growth of Dark Elves as the dominant elf force. They were always the elves to me that played more, as I always called them, the street brawling elves. You know, they could get up in your face, they could be taking the hits, but they can also, you know, steal your ball and run away. Not throw it away, run away. And hence they haven't changed that much. I mean, yes, Dark Elves did love putting a cheeky pass in, but they were quite used to screening and running and handing off the ball, and an occasional super short pass, and that hasn't changed much for them. Whereas we've seen the likes of Wood Elves disappear. Um, I guess that's one of my worries, again, is about where is this meta currently taking us? Um, and it's as good a time as any. I did promise we were going to circle back to it. Let's circle back to it now. Um, yes, the difference between the flowchart that Hargrim was describing, and to me, Blood Bowl at its best has always been where I'm taking a decision in the middle of a turn, where I see an opportunity and I find a creative thought, and that opens up something that happens. That's the Blood Bowl that gets me excited. Not the one where I've planned it the night before, turn up, rinse and repeat the same thing 6 times, going ha ha ha, and walk away with a trophy. That doesn't do a lot for me. Now, people may laugh and say, but hang on, PC, you coach a lot of dwarves. Where's the creativity there? It's one of the reasons I always avoided a lot of claw pomming. I found that route actually reduced the team to every turn I look and say, what do I claw pom this turn? And that didn't interest me much. Now, with dwarves, yes, I may be looking at where is my blitz this turn, but I find I'm constantly solving problems in different ways, even if the team seems very similar and very boring in that sense. Whereas some teams I find really build to just do a thing, and they will keep doing that thing, and if it doesn't work, they lose, and if it works, they win. And I personally don't feel dwarves are like that, but loads of other people will say they're exactly like that. I would say they're coaching dwarves wrong. Now, I did talk about circling back to this. One of the other things I've got just for us to have a little look at, let me pull this up, on my page of things we can look at is these two bits of information. Now, this was the UKTC tiering list and rule set. You will notice the Wood Elves are a tier 1 race that only get 100k of upgrade cash, that tier 2 get 130k, and it includes Underworld, and that Tomb Kings for some reason are tier 4. This, I have to tell you, is outdated information, because the world has moved on, and as of 24 hours ago, this is now our rule set for the UKTC. Hang on, I've made it disappear. So you'll notice the differences here aren't major, but I'm just interested in what we think about them. Wood Elves have slipped from tier 1 to tier 2. Tier 2 has dropped 10k from 130k to 120, and we have seen Underworld Denizens drop from tier 2 to tier 3, and I think it was, I said, Slan have risen from tier 5 to tier 4. So these are now the new UKTC rules. I don't know if that's going to impact on your coming tournament, Rick, but that's what's changed. Does that, amongst these wise heads that I have in front of me, does that feel like a good response to the current meta? Are they moving things from where they had them just because that's where they were last year to where they should be? Hargrim, are they keeping up to date with you modern Scandinavians and your takes on tournaments?
I think the part that is interesting is that, at least most interesting to me, is that they haven't touched High Elf. Because, as mentioned, High Elf has been very dominant over the past year.
Yeah, they've done really well.
They have been so strong. I became Danish champion with High Elf, and it felt like the team was playing itself.
Hang on. You just dropped in the I became Danish champion, didn't you?
Yes, I had to.
I know you had to, but I thought you'd got away with it. I'm going to call us back to that and say you absolutely just absolutely humble bragged yourself there. Your Danish championship. You know, at the start when I introduce everyone and say how's your Blood Bowl, that was a bit to go, hey, I'm Danish champion. But I love slipping it in the middle, but I'm not letting that go by without absolutely calling that out for the humble brag it was. So now that you got Danish champion with High Elves, you admit that you did it by taking a broken race that were overpowered.
The race felt like it played itself. You still have to be good at the game in order to understand, to find the niche positions, to play them at a high enough level to be competitive on top tables. But it's weird that they weren't touched, because they were touched in the World Cup rule set. They've been altered in the ATV rule set as well, because they were just too strong. They got too many skills for what they could do. They're probably the only team in the current rule set that can get away with passing. They're the only team that can both play the running game and the passing game because of the way that their thrower is built from the get-go. So not changing high
But
elf.
hasn't he got Cannoneer or Cloudburster or one of those ones I haven't bothered learning?
He's got Cloudburster,
Which is +1 on the longer 2 ranges, isn't it?
Yes. It also means that if he fails the pass, he just keeps the ball.
Ah, so he got that bit of safe throw added to it.
Yeah. You don't have to roll an agility check. You just keep the ball. Which makes high elves incredibly viable. Because now you can start considering, okay, what racial matchups do you have where you need to play the passing game? What matchups can you play the running game? What matchups are sort of finicky where it's a bit situational? It sort of creates a lot of theoretical background that you can start digging into and researching into. So not changing high elf is weird to me. The wood elf change is big because it makes them viable again. Giving them an extra skill comparable to Dark Elf and Lizardman and Undead, it makes them playable.
6 instead of 5, is that a huge change?
It is a pretty big change, in my opinion. Like, you're just giving Wood Elves an extra skill. Yeah, their catchers have lost sprint. Yeah, leaping is worse. But they were still fine in the old rules. They weren't game-breakingly broken like they were in the previous ones. They were in a state where they were actually fairly balanced. Giving them an extra skill probably will skew the data again and say that, yeah, if you give Wood Elves an extra skill comparable to Dark Elf and Lizardmen, they're going to start doing better.
So people are going to get excited about Wood Elves again. Nice to hear.
People are going to get
the sight of
excited.
sad Wood Elf coaches really hasn't warmed my heart at all for 2 years, as they sit in a corner complaining that, oh, we're not the best anymore. Oh, poor us.
From a Fumble perspective and like open play, I would say that Wood Elves should be pushed down further. To me, they don't belong in tier 2 like this.
Wow, are they getting smushed?
They're horrible. They're sub 50% win rate overall in 2020. They're terrible.
Wow.
But I mean, obviously, I'm coming from a different perspective than tournaments. Maybe the skill packages make them better.
I'm
if you
definitely
play
not
specific skills.
I'm definitely not laughing on the inside. That's horrible news.
So
Rick, did you know this about Wood Elves? I'm distraught.
They've been extremely unpopular on the NAF scene. I couldn't believe when I turned up to the Water Bowl 2 years ago, maybe last year, one player, Ali Ryder, who we all know and love in the Blood Bowl 2 streaming world, was the only coach in 110 coaches to take Wood Elves, whereas the percentage previously was monstrous. So yeah, we knew something was up, and it's about time they got dropped a tier. Maybe Krista's right, and we'll see them drop further in time. I actually still really like them in progression. They certainly have taken a hit between, no sprint on the catchers, leap being worse, passing being worse, and recosting and everything. They've taken many hits, but I still do quite like them in progression. So yeah, we did kind of know this, and I think that it's really good to see them drop.
I did hear there was someone laughing quite hard, which made it difficult to hear. But through that, I did manage to hear a Wood Elf coach complaining that they've stolen sprint from their catchers, but not made them cheaper, and that they felt was the real harm that had been done to Wood Elves. But like I said, this person was just laughing so hard, I really couldn't make out exactly the root cause of that. Store has called bullshit though, Hargrim, on you saying that Wood Elves aren't very powerful. At the same tournament, and well done for becoming, undisputed Danish champion, being a champion of one of the regions of Scandinavia must be something to be very proud of. He'd like to point out that at that very same tournament, he finished above you with Wood Elves.
Yeah, he also played better than I did, so that's explanatory. Why he would end up better.
He's annoyingly quite good at the Blood Bowl, isn't he?
Unfortunately, and it goes all to his head.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean,
so the rest of us have to deal with it.
He will tell you that quicker than I will, that's for sure. Store, one of the people I'm excited to say is coming on in the next couple of editions of One World, One Blood Bowl, so we'll all get to meet him, and that will be wonderful for his sense of self, which definitely needs the reinforcing. What else haven't we covered in terms of the meta? Is that where we feel we're at? What needs addressing? There will be a rules review in May. What do they need to knock on the head next? What's the big problem? I don't know how we do it in a rules review. My big concern for where we're at right now is power creep. I didn't want to say I was seeing it, but I mean, Underworld, I think, was just sprue-based design. I don't think it was supposed to be power creep. I think they just were lazy. They said, let's put one of those sprues in, one of those sprues, and one of those sprues. It'll work. And boy, did it ever. And we got, an Underworld team that's much better, much more interesting to
At,
play, but
at
much stronger.
this at the same time, they're set to tier 3.
Yes, and
They
they were
were
mistiered. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm not talking about Games Workshop because they have no idea what they're talking about. Underworld Denizens in this tournament is tier 3. I don't think they belong there. Same as Orcs, they don't belong in tier 3. They're too good.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Orcs. I think they're still one of my picks for the UKTC as a race that will do much, much better than its tiering suggests it should. But then we got New Norse. Now, I thought New Norse was a bit of a downgrade. I thought Drunkard was going to be just hilarious and really limit them. But people tell me they're doing great, that they have leapt forwards with joy and alacrity and greasy beer pigs. I don't know if you've seen that or if you agree that Norse are stronger than they used to be.
I haven't seen enough of the new Norse to really be able to give a consistent enough answer to it. I will say, in theory, the new Norse seem. I appreciate what GW is doing with trying to revamp a lot of old rosters that, to me, were quite boring. Like the standard template of lineman, blitzer, thrower, catcher, maybe a little special jazz here and there. I like the fact that they're actually going back and looking at some of these core rosters and saying, maybe we can give this a bit of a little extra spice to make it interesting. And I think they've really hit the nail on the head with that, with both the new Amazons and the new Norse. I think the drunkard rule is a bit too much. It's adding a little fluff to a team that's supposed to be drunk. Yeah, I get it, but it's kind of hitting them hard. But I still think that they are a pretty good roster, like almost as good as they were before, if not slightly better because of the beer pigs. But that's purely based on a theoretical approach.
And obviously, Knobs and Bobs, I'm sure we'd all agree, didn't come in overpowered. They sat quite nicely within the arrangement of races available to us. But then we got Amazons, and we got a strength 4 human for the very first time,
Yeah.
who comes with defensive, so you can't use guard on her. Are we starting to see power creep? I mean, I hear about it in other Games Workshop rule sets. I've never really seen it in Blood Bowl, but it rumored is
Uh,
the way you sell plastic. Is that? Do we feel we're facing power creep? Is that a problem I should worry about?
I think we are. Every single time Games Workshop are releasing a new race or new star players, it seems like they're trying to one up themselves. It seems like they're constantly trying to find ways of selling a miniature by making it more and more broken. How do they like they're consistently managing to do that? Like they released Bomber Dribble Snot, which has an incredibly broken rule, special rule for a star player, costs next to nothing, is not even a liability, and then they go and release something like Cindy Pie Whistle, trying to one up themselves. It's like, yeah, now you can throw 2 bombs, but you have a 50% chance of being sent off instead, but you can use 2 bombs.
Rick,
It
is the
seems like
sky falling, or is it just the moon in a bucket?
It's too early to say. Certainly, the new Norse and the new Amazons have come out very, very strong. Chris is probably the guy to ask on this because he's put them really high tier in the latest Black Box Trophy, and I think for good reason. I just got my best ever result in my Water Bowl league with the new Norse. I got to the final, lost there, and that's like a 50-man league with coaches of the ilk of Kfool and stuff like this. So it's that was something, and it was certainly because the Norse felt very, very strong, at least after the initial game. I think they're a little hard to build with everything if you want all the cool stuff. But then a couple of games in, when you've got some skills and a bit of money for a reroll more, then suddenly they get very, very strong. However, the flip side to this coin, out for the Norse and the Amazons, is that one of the possible problems with the rule set all the way through has been that it really, really favors teams with strong TV efficient linemen and women. And Norse and Amazons certainly have that, crazily efficient. Firstly, there's so much MNG in the game now that teams like Lizard Men and Black Orcs just suffer horribly, that then have to replace a strength 4 strength access piece with a stunty that doesn't even have general access. That's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, so you should think about your Black Orcs not as 6 and 6, but as usually 5 Black Orcs, because there'll be one rotating through missing.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, exactly. And I've seen some. Again, I'll use Kfool as an example. he just played a Black Orc season and found it an absolute nightmare. He's still got them to like the quarters or the semi or something. He's unbelievably good, isn't he? But yeah, he really said that it was a huge problem for Black Orcs. Gedanik said the same thing when he played them on Fumble. And conversely to this, Norse and Amazons therefore benefit by comparison because they bring in this amazing lone alignment piece that's very efficient, that can hugely step into the shoes of a missing positional, and then also as well as the MNGs, if you're playing a format that involves redrafting, the problem gets even worse.
Why?
Because then a lot of the time you're having to you get to keep a few players, right, that you really want to keep that you can afford, and then you have to strip back the rest. And the more that you can strip that back TV efficiently to a still very functional piece, and then throw out effectively your star players, not literal star players in a Blood Bowl sense, but your few big positionals that you're keeping. Teams like Chaos or Nurgle that really take a long time to build up to something effective suffer massively by comparison. But to that, absolutely horribly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add to that. I mean, I absolutely agree, Rick. I think it's one of the things dwarves do redraft quite well, but not half as well as something with a 50k lineman that's good out of the box, which an Amazon or a Norse line person is. And then randoms on them are incredibly effective. I've said before, random generals on Norse line people, on Amazon line people, there are so many good skills that one of on the team is a great start. And then you see if they build on top of it. If they get more SPP, then perhaps you take a chosen skill on top of that, lean into whatever that random primary is giving you. But if they die, it's no biggie. We get a new one for 50k. I think it's really interesting where the meta's taking us in terms of that, and I do worry about power creep. A lot of the chat's been saying that perhaps it's, really the power creep is coming in with the stars more than the races. I think it's too soon to tell with the races. If we do get some of the races that were on the app, as they appeared on the app, they were already incredibly powerful. So unless they're toned way down, then we might see some race power creep. But it's certainly something to be keeping an eye on. What else do we have to talk about? Because we have already run well over the hour, and I don't want to keep you here all night, guys. I did also ask that 3 things that are plain bad and that urgently need changing. Anything we haven't covered in this chat that was on that list? We dealt with the state of the meta and where everything's at, but
Krista mentioned, right, so I think we've touched the stuff that's really desperate, and I want to give credit again for the fact that they have fixed the inducements. I think prayers to Nuffle as a balance system was one of the worst things we've ever seen at Blood Bowl, and I'm super glad that's been overhauled. But I want to touch a little bit more on what Krista said about passing. It obviously isn't breaking the game in any way because it's just so bad, but what we're seeing is really the running game only being viable. They've nerfed Leap, so more dynamic, varied teams like that don't work. Vampires haven't had a proper remake. So other ways of playing the game have been kind of pushed to the side, and passing, which originally we were promised, well, not everybody heard, but the original idea when they were like, we're going to make Blood Bowl 2020, they were saying we're going to make passing much better, and the complete opposite happened. And one of the probably the biggest crimes in that was the skills. Random skills is probably my favorite thing in Blood Bowl 2020. I absolutely love random skilling everything. And it should be very viable to have a thrower and be able to, for very cheap, random skill passing skills on them and make them this incredible throw piece that actually makes the passing game. It shouldn't be good out the box. It should be about where it is out the box, but then it should be able to develop into this amazing thing pretty quickly. And it isn't there. And it's because they got super lazy, as we all know. And they, instead of coming up with actual new passing skills to make it interesting and dynamic, they split the old, already sub-strength passing skills into multiple parts. So now you have to have 2 or 3 skills to get the painfully average skill that used to exist in CRP, which is just madness. So if they can actually put those skills back together and come up with some new skills on top in whatever this 2024, 2025 rule set is, we'd have a much more fun passing game.
I had a crazy thought, which was, I know they want to be able to random in every category. Why couldn't passing just be cut to 6 instead of 12? You can still random just as easily between 6. It would be not that incompatible with the rest of what they've done with the rule set, but we could have 6 good passing skills to randomly choose between.
It has to look good on the page.
Is this me being crazily out of the box again? I'll get back in my box. Sorry about that. one thing that I let pass, but I thought it was a beautiful comment from my good friend Store, who will be coming on the show. Um, he said one of the things about the meta is that Malmir is still at the top of it, which I kind of love. I love Rob. I am seeing him again at the UKTC this year. I will try and talk him into getting enough coal into his bunker that he can run a webcam for a few hours and maybe come on the show. I'd love to have him talk about the Blood Bowl 2020 rule set, in which he is in a very interesting place. Having hated it, he plays it, but isn't in love with it. I think he'll be delighted if there is any news of a new rule set coming over the horizon. But he's still incredibly good at Blood Bowl. And isn't that, as we said, we started this very much by saying that Blood Bowl 2020 is in a good place, and it is still Blood Bowl. That's still the case, isn't it? Because I'm very aware, we've talked a lot about the tabletop scene, about things that we all know about what's going on Fumble. There's a lot of Blood Bowl 2 players out there going, I don't understand any of this. None of this makes sense to me. I'm still claw pomming and it's great. I love it. They're about to launch into this adventure where this rule set is coming to them. Are they going to be all right, Rick? Give them something warm and cheery as we come towards the end of the show.
Yeah, it's funny because we argue all about these peripheral things, but yeah, the core game is still Blood Bowl, still super fun to play. I've been loving playing Fumble with the up to date rules, loving playing tabletop. There's of course new good stuff. I've just said how much I love random skills. I truly do. So and one of the biggest things that I wrote down, you asked for good states of
Yeah,
game thing. The number one for me was it's a living game now.
yeah,
We've got a growing community. New stuff's coming out for people that like to collect, people that like to do the hobby, people that like updated rules. You know, as you could think that, and I really did think CRP was a phenomenal rule set. I know that isn't what everybody thought, but once you've played a rule set for 20 years, you're pretty ready for a new one.
yeah.
So the fact that it's now a fresh rule set and that it's a living game trumps anything that came before. Like, it could be so. The most hardcore opinion, which I'm virtually that guy, is that CRP was amazing, but it was a dead rule set and nothing new was coming out. And now we've got a brand new rule set and loads of new stuff's coming out. So even though I think this rule set is currently quite a bit worse, albeit getting better and has potential to become a better rule set, it's still in a better state.
Just because it's new, because it's different, because it's bringing new
Yeah.
people in, and it means the game, as you say, is alive. It's why I pushed for change, was excited by change. I did feel we'd get where we are, and I tend to agree. I think the change hasn't all been for the better. I think some of it's been for the worse. But I think the change was needed anyway. People just got bored. People played a few tournaments, go, yeah, this is all worked out. I know what to do. They know what to do. That doesn't really interest me. I mean, we had a year where the innovation was swapping tackle to frenzy on a war dancer, and then next year everyone swapped back. And I went, and that's the news in Blood Bowl this year. I'm sure Bonehead
And
Podcast got a few hours content out of it, but I just
uh,
didn't feel I could. That's not revolution to me. Um,
that's a data point to that,
Krista, good
where
news, good things. Let's
with
do
the
that.
with Fumble having access to both 2016 and 2020 rule sets simultaneously,
Yep.
we're currently in a state where people are playing 2020 95% of the time. 95%. That says something. If it was horrible, people would stick with 2016, but they don't.
Yeah, and it is available for those of you that do want a hit of 2016, and there isn't Blood Bowl 2 with its limitations. That Krista has said that Fumble will keep that available. I remember the last time we changed rules, which was 100 million years ago. There was a character called Zombie 69 who insisted that it was the worst thing that was ever happening, and that a division must be made for continuity Blood Bowl. And Krista dutifully made the division, and Zombie 69 sat there on his own for 3 months, and no one else wanted to play it anymore. And then he left because there was no one wanting to. He'd dug a trench so deep of the I will not move forward that he wouldn't try it, and no one else wanted
It
to sit in the past.
it took roughly a year from the last LRB4 game being played until I removed code from the site to support it. A year.
Yeah, so the opportunity is there, but people don't want the opportunity they think they will. And I think the same will happen with Blood Bowl 3, don't you? That no matter how bad it is, the Twitcherati, the Blood Bowl 2 players, they will go there because that's
Yeah.
nearer what Blood Bowl actually is. Hargrim, you're not unknown on Blood Bowl 2, but is Blood Bowl 3 tempting you? Are you excited?
Uh,
And should everybody be excited about the new rules?
I made a promise to myself at the beginning of this year that um, at least my university hours are going to be starting to be cut back because my courses are getting lighter. I'm going to have a little bit more time. That I was going to try and get back into streaming. I was going to try and pick up Blood Bowl 3, sit down, go through it, try and make some educational content both on Twitch and then later upload it to sort of guide guide people into the game from a younger generation's perspective and from a younger player's mind of how the game works. To the Blood Bowl 2 players that are watching this and have no idea what the hell is going on, you're gonna be fine. Everything is going to be all right. I promise you, as long as you take about half of the rule book and ignore it, you will be fine. Just to reassure you, everything is going to be fine.
And that's what Cyanide does. They take half of the book and ignores it.
Yeah, that's, of course, the other part about it. I don't think we need to be all doom and gloom about Blood Bowl 2016 dying, CRP dying. I think it's about time that those old rule sets were being put to rest, because nothing happened for 20 years within the game. Things are now starting to happen. We're seeing constant change. It's also one of my worries is that we're seeing too much sort of being implemented all the time, that it can become very overwhelming and just reach to a point where it becomes enough content to too much content.
What I'm looking forward to, though, is the day where Core sits down, the Kefir, and sits down and says to me, Dave, I have it. I have sussed the rule set. And then the next day they release Season 3. That's where I want the game to be. I don't actually want to turn up to a tournament and everyone's brought exactly the same team, because we all know what the right answer is.
I mean, even Core has been experimenting with the new rule set with
Yeah.
Slam.
Yeah.
He's been playing and enjoying Slam.
It's because they were massively under-tiered and hence were very powerful and he could win tournaments with them. But yes, he did experiment with them, i.e. point out how broken they are by ruthlessly exploiting the weakness. But that's part of what people should be doing. That's the fun of a new meta. That's the fun of a changing rule set. And some people, I mean, Store is another prime example, lives to find those opportunities within a rule set where there can be a 2% advantage gained, where they can use a skill or a star or an opportunity in a way that no one's seen before, or that does something different. And if they do get a 20% advantage in that tournament, they're probably not going to do it in the next one. That isn't the fun of it. It's not to win endless ones with it. It's to prove it, get it done, and move on. I do like change. I do think we're in a decent place. There's a lot of opportunities this year. I just hope Blood Bowl 3 isn't terrible. And I particularly hope it doesn't mean that Krista's pressing the big red button. Is Fumble going to survive the arrival of Blood Bowl 3, my friend?
Very likely. We survived 20 years. We survived BB2. We survived BB1. We survived the cease and desist order. We're still here. I think we can handle BB3.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said I think it's good for Blood Bowl if Blood Bowl 3 is good. I think it'll bring new people into the hobby, which will end up playing tabletop, which will end up coming on Fumble for the better implementation of the rule set, the closer the tabletop rule set, and for the fact that it's got all 28 races available right now, 29 if you count Slan or if you're doing a NAF tournament, which all happen on Fumble too. I think what's good for Blood Bowl is good for all of us. I mean, hence the whole name of this podcast. That's why someone said earlier, what a lovely panel. And you are a lovely panel. Of all the panels I've had, definitely my favourite. And it's really unfair of me to say that, we have Krista representing Fumble and Rick representing BB2 and Hargrim representing Tabletop. Because in truth, I think all four of us consider ourselves people that just play Blood Bowl. In a variety of ways, in a variety of formats, in a variety of places. I mean, Krista may be Mr. Fumble, but you play tabletop. I've seen you do it. I've been there when
Indeed.
you have. You can't deny it. And Chris and Hargrim, and Rick and Hargrim, like me, are all over Blood Bowl in all of its formats. The whole point of this show has always been to talk to people in every corner of Blood Bowl and to make you available, whatever corner of Blood Bowl you're in out there, that you're part of all of us, whether that's the painters, the hobbyists, the online players, the tabletop players. It doesn't matter. We're all doing the same thing. Blood Bowl's in a great place. It's headed into an exciting year with the tabletop, with the new game being released, with Krista and Fumble going from strength to strength. Innovations we haven't talked about. I really wanted to. We've got the vertical pitch available. We've got the square-sized pitch available. We've got permanent player markings. Your favoured markings for how you mark certain skills and how they're going to be remembered and they're going to be put onto players for you. It's all just going to be so cool. And it will continue to provide the great tabletop-like experience that I think is what Fumble does. I think Blood Bowl 3 is something very different. It's a computer game version of Blood Bowl. We are pleasured to be living in such glorious times. I'm going to give everyone a chance to say goodnight. and then do yet another wind up before we finish. We are in those closing moments, though. Krista, what's your New Year's message to the world?
I don't know. I don't have messages. Have
Expressive
fun.
and beautiful as always.
Yes, indeed. Just
Um,
have fun. Enjoy the game. It doesn't matter what mode you're playing. If you're playing tabletop or Fumble or BB2, BB3, whatever. Just enjoy the game. It's fun.
and
Try
once
to not
again,
take it so seriously.
I can't say it enough. I'm 50 years old. 20 years of those I've been on Fumble. It's been a major part of my life. It's been, I've raised my daughter, literally sat in the crook of my knee while my other hand is clicking on a game of Fumble. She recognises all of the sounds still from when, before she understood language, she understood that Daddy got unhappy when the toilet noise happened. So Fumble's been a huge part of my life, and I'm sure a huge part of everyone that's been on Fumble. So my huge thank you again for 20 years of just joyful fun. Most of it for free. I do donate when I can afford to, but you've never asked for money. You've never asked me for a penny, and I'll never quite get over that. Hargrim, say happy 2023 to people. Wish them well. Let's leave them with positives. What's your closing message?
I hope 2023 isn't horrible. I hope you all enjoy Blood Bowl. Drink some beers, roll some dice. Don't be knobs. And if you can find the time for it, come to the Danish Open on the second weekend of June, 10th and 11th. It's going to be amazing.
And you two, like Stork, can finish well above Hargrim. When he says don't be knobs, he does mean don't be a knob, not don't be imperial nobility, which you definitely should be, because they're quite interesting. Rick, 2023, say hello and goodbye.
Yeah, hello and goodbye, everybody. Do hope you have a happy new year. Be the best people you can be. Your potential is limitless.
Yeah, as is Blood Bowls. But it only gets that way if we all take part. If we try and hit Blood Bowl 3 and see the positives, there's going to be some negatives. But if we try and see the positives, if we stay loyal to the things we love, like Fumble and Krista and enjoying Blood Bowl, and this is the hard one, my partner makes an absolute fortune as a change manager. It's largely how I live, the playboy lifestyle I do. I am merely an accompaniment on her arm, a paid-for bauble, if you like, a trinket. And the reason she gets paid to be a change manager is people are naturally resistant to change. We like what we know, what we understand, what we're used to. This is going to be an unsettling year for some people because they're going to be finally dragged from a rule set that should have been buried 7 years ago to a rule set that actually released 2.5 years ago and may be on its way out. But that is the schedule with these big, much delayed, heavily bugged games. When it does come out, it's still going to be Blood Bowl. It may be different to the Blood Bowl you know, and in the next couple of episodes we're going to look at the new teams you're going to get in Blood Bowl 3, what they are and how they're working at the moment. So I plan to do some content specifically around that, and then really specifically about the rule set changes, what is exactly changing. Because for some of us it is going to be really difficult to relearn a game we already think we know. But there's some glory in that, there's some joy in that. Why isn't it exciting to relearn something? And if you were Malmir, you're still going to be Malmir. Unless something awful happens, Malmir will look at any version of Blood Bowl and be able to kick all of our asses because he's Malmir. So if you love Blood Bowl, I think you're still going to love Blood Bowl in 2023. And that's the message from One World, One Blood Bowl. Just go out and spread the love to everyone. Tell them Blood Bowl's back. Recruit new people. Show them the joys of our beautiful game. And let's head forwards in harmony together. All of us playing beautiful Blood Bowl. Except the French, of course. What? How did you not see that coming? God.
I don't know. I just didn't expect
it. Anything anyone's got to say other than good night? No, I think that's a beautiful time to leave it. I'm going to go and watch Match of the Day because Arsenal beautifully destroyed Tottenham in the North London derby. That's why I'm happy. It's nothing to do with Blood Bowl. It's been wonderful. Thank you for being here. If you've been here live, you give us all sorts of lovely... FB Delicio, I am joking. I shouldn't have to say this at this point in our relationship, but that was entirely humour. I am so proud of the fact that in France I'm known as Pepeche. I still don't know what that means. I suspect it's big fat idiot that plays dwarves. But I am thrilled that I've got my own nickname in a different language. When I say One World, One Blood Bowl, I mean it, even to the French. And no jokes this time. I mean it to all of us. I mean all types of Blood Bowl. I mean all over the world. I mean, it's one hobby. We're all nerds. For goodness sake, we don't need division. That's going to be where we end for tonight. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Thanks for taking part. We will be doing more in 2 weeks. I'm back, and we're going to be talking, as I said, about the newer races to Blood Bowl 3, and also hence newer races in the Season 2 second season edition. After that, we're going to do a just before the release. We're going to do a what to get ready for when you're expecting. So expecting a new rule set rather than a baby. So we won't be able to have Rick on that. And then we will be doing some reactions to the launch ones. We'll be doing a show covering all of that. And then there's so much more I want to talk about. So after that, we'll circle back around to how do we run tournaments in this new rule set? What do leagues look like in Season 2? And I particularly want to get one on of all the makers, people like Candlejack, who does so much work with Krista behind the scenes on the client side of Fumble, people like Bezel, people like Pedro, who run the sites that help with Blood Bowl 2, and are they planning the same with Blood Bowl 3? I've got content ideas that will take us at least until the middle of this year. So One World, One Blood Bowl will hopefully be going nowhere, but for now, it's going to go to bed. Thank you very much for coming, and night night.
Bye bye.